We now move on to Desert Lands, episode 3, and possibly my favourite episode, not just because there's so much Australian fauna, but it is a very well done episode and one of the longest in the series. So there's lots of cool creatures here, different marsupials, large reptiles, and all sorts of other stuff trying to survive in the desert landscape. So without further ado, let's get started. So the episode opens with our family of ground sloths sleeping in their cave home, preparing to go out to find food. As the pair emerge to go feed, we can notice that the mother is plantigrade as she walks. Basically what this means is walking on the soles of your feet, so how we walk, rather than digitigrade, which means walking on the sides of your feet, that many other ground sloth species were able to do. This sparked the question, what species of ground sloth are they depicting as plantigrade? Megalonyx was plantigrade on its hind legs, but this sloth is plantigrade on both its front limbs and its hind limbs, so it's raising a lot of questions. There have been a few primary suspects, the first being Northotheriops, a ground sloth that was discovered in caves etched into the walls of canyons in the southwest of North America, and then Diabolotherium, a sloth of a similar size but found in the Peruvian Andes in South America. However, given we see a Teratornis, a species of large raptor known from North America during the Pleistocene, we can sort of narrow down the location of where this sloth lives and the species in general. As this sloth begins to ascend the cliff, we can say that given that we are likely in the southwestern United States, given the Teratorn, that this species is indeed Northotheriops shastensis, or the Shasta ground sloth. Clinging to its mother's back, the baby Northotheriops is being carried around much like modern sloths, and also anteaters that carry their young in a similar way. For those who don't know, sloths and anteaters are part of a group known as Xenarthrans, a clade of placental mammals that also has armadillos like the Glyptotherium in the previous episode, and Didicurus from later in the season. As the pair scale the cliff, they find a bit of food growing out of the cliff wall. Then after reaching the top, we can get a better look at the plantigrade movement of the Northotheriops. However, as the sun begins to rise, it creates thermals, allowing the predatory Teratorns to be able to soar higher and be within striking range of these vulnerable sloths. In the meantime, we head to Australia, where we see a contemporary thorny devil, a lizard specifically adapted to the desert landscape, and it dips its foot into a small puddle left by a desert storm. Then, through capillary action, the thorny devil soaks the water up, running along the grooves between the scales all the way up to the mouth, where it is then able to drink it, and the water runs all over its body and allows it to glisten bright gold in the sun. We then see Diprotodon, the largest marsupial ever discovered, seen here in a herd of all females with the joey in tow. Now this species is often called a giant wombat, and though they are in the same clade, same group as wombats, which is the Diprotodon today, they are a separate group of animals, a separate group of marsupials, and they do have a few distinct differences from wombats. One being their size, but also their feet and their leg structure is very different to wombats. Wombats also have digging claws, whereas Diprotodon really has claws that are only there for a little bit of digging, but more so to just grip the substrate that they're walking on. This shot I thought was really cool because I actually recognised the location they filmed in for this segment, that being the Pinnacles. Now the Pinnacles is an area in Western Australia where limestone has been eroded and shaped by desert winds over millennia to form these interesting shapes that cover a fairly large area. Now, I know the Pinnacles is also a location in the United States, but this is not the same. This is in the deserts of Western Australia. The lead female is guiding her herd towards a distant waterhole. However, old age and the drying of the continent, which has caused for these longer migrations, have taken their toll on her. We see a central bearded dragon, the species most widespread in the desert of Australia. The lead female unfortunately succumbs to the elements. With the lead female gone, a new leader needs to be appointed, and two dominant females engage in a brutal fight for leadership. So through several bites and shoves, the previous lead female's own daughter wins the battle. She then leads the herd off in search of water. The herd reaches a dried up lake, where in previous years water would have existed, but because of the climate change of the Ice Age, this lake, known as Lake Coorabulla, has dried up. This site is where paleontologists have found hundreds of Diprotodon specimens, all brought here by the promise of water but getting stuck and dying in the thick mud of the recently dried lake. We see evidence of this as the bodies of other Diprotodon that have been led in the promise of water already lie here. This is where we see another contemporary species, the wedge-tailed eagle, one of Australia's top predators, swoops in to feed on the carcass. Following her nose, the daughter wanders onto a dry creek bed and begins to dig. A mixture of her front powerful legs and a sturdy lower jaw help her to excavate the pebble-ridden creek bed. And by luck, there is water, and the herd is able to quench their thirst. But it is only so long that the Diprotodon would be able to survive on tricks like this until eventually the climate defeats the species as a whole. It's not only herding animals finding it tough. Thylacoleo, the marsupial lion that is related to modern koalas and wombats, is also struggling. We get a good look at their unique dentition as this individual yawns in the morning rise. They have a very distinct jaw structure, and I actually have a cast of Thylacoleo's lower jaw here with me, and you have this long tooth, this incisor that is used for just digging into prey, and then these sharper modified canines that are used for slicing, more so a cheek tooth in a sort of way, the carnassials that animals like Smilodon use and other big cats to shear meat. And that is really the main clue as to this animal being a predator rather than a herbivore. We see multiple Thylacoleo being depicted as part of a social group, as we have found multiple Thylacoleo specimens together in some instances, and so it is possible they lived a social lifestyle. Whether they hunted cooperatively is not fully known either. We see two of the young joeys playing, but more so like cats, likely a result of some form of convergent evolution which led to Thylacoleo's unique appearance, where two unrelated species evolved similar adaptations to survive under similar selective pressures in an ecosystem. The adults head off to hunt, and we see that they walk very much like koalas, traversing the ground with a sort of strut-like walk. I've witnessed this myself. I was at a wildlife park a couple of years ago, and a koala had come down from the trees and was walking along the ground, walks almost exactly the same as how these Thylacoleo are walking here. The species is more well adapted to forest habitats, but they reach a shrubland below, a new habitat that has encroached as forests have disappeared thanks to the drying of Australia. And they are stalking some formidable prey, Procoptodon, giant short-faced kangaroos too heavy to hop. We see the joey practicing a cooling technique unique to kangaroos and other macropods, which is licking their forearms to encourage their capillaries to dilate and increase blood flow to cool themselves. The Thylacoleo then spring into action, charging for the kangaroos. The mob of Procoptodon flee, however only run at 16 km an hour or 10 miles an hour, which is not very fast when trying to escape predators. Now these kangaroos are also too heavy to hop, and so run much like a theropod dinosaur or a human does. However, Thylacoleo isn't much of a sprinter either, and is in fact slower than Procoptodon, being more adapted for using an ambush tactic to ambush prey and tackle it rather than chase it down. I knew that they were probably not that fast, but I was laughing at this scene because it was a really good misdirect. Like, you thought the Procoptodon were in serious trouble, but the Thylacoleo were much slower. Now, it's not really that funny, because it kind of is a little sad. This animal that is adapted to forest lifestyle, being forced to try new hunting tactics to bring down prey it would have been able to much easier bring down in a different environment. But yeah, this was an interesting hunt. They are more so like koalas than the lion nickname in this case, and unfortunately fail their hunt. The two adults return as the joey's mother stays back to try a different attack. We then head to New Zealand, which also had some drier regions during this time, and we see a dung beetle pushing a ball of dung up the slope of a dune. This is where we meet one of Oceania's giant birds. Standing 6 feet tall, the giant moa, the tallest bird ever to live. This male is crossing some large coastal dunes that look like the ones on the island of Gari in Queensland, Australia, that sits just off the coast and is actually where the series Chased by Dinosaurs that starred Nigel Marven film the giant claw episode. He enters a nearby patch of wet forest, and you really get to see the bright colours of his feathers and also his head, being very much similar to that of a cassowary. He then begins to call out for a mate, and these calls carry a lot of information: size, health, fitness, number of parasites, even age. A female moa responds, and she is about double his height, making her the tallest bird ever. The male makes himself look smaller, as the smallest males have the most successful young, keeping them out of sight of predators. His short king display wins her approval, and the two mate. We see a New Zealand bellbird, or koromako. This male will stay with the female over her gestation period, ensuring she eats the right food, stays safe as the egg develops, and also chases off any other males who are willing to mate with his mate. He picks out a suitable nest site sheltered by a rock, where the female lays a single giant egg. The male stays with the egg for its incubation, nurturing it until it hatches, and will be the sole protector of the chick until it reaches adulthood. Back in Australia, we see a rainbow bee-eater, a species I actually recently photographed in the wild for the first time back in September, as well as a flock of crested pigeons, and if you've been to Australia or live here, then these birds are probably quite familiar to you, as they are certainly one of the most common around. We then meet one of two adorable little joeys of the mysterious marsupial. Here in this rocky bushland we see a family of three, two joeys and one mother. We get a good look at the adult, and we've had an idea of what this species is. They're also more so runners than hoppers, moving around on all four legs. One of the joeys approaches this scorpion, which I believe is a Flinders Ranges scorpion, one of Australia's largest species. And this is where it is revealed that these ancient macropods are in fact carnivorous, or at least omnivorous. Now, there are a few carnivorous macropods in the fossil record, and they are all in the same family as the modern musky rat kangaroo, which feeds on invertebrates as well as vegetable matter. And so this is likely Propleopus, a larger relative of the rat kangaroo that we were suspecting in previous videos. This larger joey starts digging around in the ground when a lizard emerges from the ground, a Megalania hatchling, of which the joeys begin to pursue. During this chase we see another common Australian bird, the galah, a species of cockatoo with a bright pink head. The Megalania hatchlings reach a rock turret, of which they scale with ease. The Propleopus joeys see that their food is not playing the easy game. With the hatchlings high up in the cracks and crevices of the turret, the joeys try climbing up to reach them. One bolts out across the ground and is faced with one of the joeys, and whips its tail to deter the predator, which is a technique used by modern monitor lizards too. However, this banquet has not gone unnoticed by another predator, an adult Megalania. The design is perfection, to say the least, with the forked tongue that varanids use to taste their world, the skull shape, even the little bump in the centre of the skull that Megalania has been depicted with previously. The only thing wrong with it is the pupil, which is a slit of which monitor lizards do not have. According to lead paleontological consultant Darren Naish, a correction wasn't able to be made as it was a little late in production to be able to revisit it and get that fixed. But if we were to revisit the Ice Age in a sequel season, we could see a fixed Megalania eye. This one is also the mother of the hatchlings, but monitor lizards are not caring parents, and so eat any hatchling that crosses their path, even if it is their own. This is not just blind cannibalism, as the ones caught by the larger predators are the weaker of the clutch, so this helps to ensure the strongest will survive. The Megalania charges for the joeys. The larger joey flees, but the smaller one climbs the turret to try and escape the lizard. These rock turrets are quite large, probably 3 or so meters tall, and so it can give us some good scale for the Megalania, which is about 4 meters long, in at least the males, with females being a bit smaller. Up high, the Propleopus is safe, at least until the Megalania uses its powerful claws and strong limbs to start to climb the rock after the joey. But being a macropod has its benefits, and the joey leaps to safety and runs away from the lizard, and returns safe and sound back to his family, leaving the Megalania to find food another day. We return to the canyon, with the mother Nothotherops who has fed for a little too long, and has given the thermals time to rise, allowing the Teratons to gain height and pose a serious threat to the pair. The Teratons swoop close to try and throw the mother off balance. One lands to try and snatch the baby, but the mother bats it away with her powerful claws. Another swoop, and it looks like they have fallen. But the mother manages to clamber back to the cave and get the baby safely inside, then fending off the Teratons from the cave entrance. Mother and baby are safe, for now, at least until the next time they have to scale the cliff to find food. Back in Australia, the Thylacoleo joey is still waiting for its mother. And this is her new plan, waiting in a high tree for her prey to come to her, like a real drop bear. The heat encourages the Procoptodon to seek shade, and that is exactly where she is waiting, atop a large eucalyptus tree. She leaps down from the branches and tackles the joey, delivering a lethal bite. She then must drag her prize back to the cliff top, which is a few kilometers away. She's made it though, by nightfall, and now the family can have a good meal, and that is where we leave them. But this was a really good episode. I really enjoyed Desert Lands. Like, the Australian fauna was on full display. I would have liked to have seen a couple more, like Genyornis and Thylacine, but potentially that's for a sequel season. Everything else was fantastic. The Nothotheriops scene was very tense. The moa scene was really cool as well. Didn't see a Haas eagle, but again, sequel season could potentially show that off. But it really showed a lot of these animals doing things that you don't expect. Megalania going after some fairly small prey, eating its own young. We see Thylacoleo trying to chase after these huge kangaroos that it simply cannot run after, and has to think of a way to use the scrubland habitat to its advantage. Propleopus being a carnivorous macropod, even though it's accurate to the species, it's still unexpected. And Dinosaurs, the giant moa, having the most drastic dimorphism I have ever seen in a bird. But yeah, that is all for Desert Lands. What was your favourite creature featured in this episode? What was your favourite sequence? Let me know down in the comments, and I'll see you next for Grasslands.